Okay, good morning. So we are starting today the Mishnah on the bottom of Chaf Amud Aleph. We're going to be focusing today on Chaf Amud Beis. It says the Mishnah as follows: Nashim va'avadim uktanim p'tur mikriyat shema. Women, servants, and children are all pater in Kriyat Shema. Turning the page to Chaf Amud Beis, u'minat tefillin, and they're putter in the midst of putting on tefillin. They are chayav in davening, in mezuzah, and in berachas hamazon. So women are putter, shema, and tefillin, chayav in tefillah, mezuzah, and berachas hamazon. Let's see Rashi. Says Rashi back on the Mishnah on Chaf and off on the bottom. Nashim avanim kana p'tur b'kriyat shema. Shehi mitzvah teishat man grama. Why are women pater in Kriyat Shema? Because Kriyat Shema is the mitzvah teishat man grama. V'kaim lo b'kedushin denashim p'tur midaraisa. Tefillin nami mitzvah teishat man grama, and tefillin is also a mitzvah teishat man grama. How could that be? The sovar lailo v'shabbos lavs man tefillin inu, because we hold that nighttime and Shabbos is not this man tefillin. Again, not everybody necessarily agrees. It's not necessarily so simple. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to do it now. I want to focus on the next Rashi. Kanim. We say that Nashim, Avadim, and Ktanim are P'tur in Kriyat Shema. So what does it mean that P'tur in Kriyat Shema? What kind of a katan are we talking about? Says Rashi. I feel katan she'gilach. Even we're talking about a katan who's already gilach. In other words, he's not a little baby anymore. He's 9, 10 years old, as Rashi already explained before. A father is not required to teach even a son who is a gila chinuch is not required to teach him Kriyat Shema. Because the father's not always going to be home when there's this man Kriyat Shema. So how could you mechanech the kid in the midst of Kriyat Shema if he's not going to be there at the time? So according to Rashi, what does it mean? What kind of a katan are we talking about when we say Nashim Rabbanim Ktanim B'Tur Kriyat Shema? According to Rashi, we're talking about a katan. Shegia l'chinuch. Says Taisus, what are you talking about? Bottom Taisus. Ktanim B'Tur Kriyat Shema. Says Taisus, Pirush HaKuntra is. That can't be correct. Why? Because we have a Gemara in Sukkah Membeis that tells us, I'm reading Katan Hayadeh, Lishmar Tefillin Oven V'chayav, Liknos Lo Tefillin. We have it's very clear Gemara, right? Why we only do Tefillin a month before or 3 months before or whatever the meaning is that you particularly have is not so simple. The Mishnah tells us, the Gemara tells us there in Sukkah, that when you reach a certain age of chinuch, that you're able to be wearing the tefillin without, acting inappropriately. So then the father's mechuyev to get him tefillin. So clearly, that's even a cotton that's a gila chinuch, that a cotton like that is chayiv in tefillin. Alma k'shegila chinuch l'shayich beit tefillin, chayiv beit tefillin. Ubekriyash manami yesh l'chayiv yosim mistama. Says Taisha, says Pashit. Mistama, a kid who's able to be watching his tefillin, he's chayiv in tefillin, his father has to get him tefillin, so for sure, for Shema. And in fact, a kid who learns how to speak, the Gemara says, that's what you teach kids, is the first sukkum of Kriyat Shema. So obviously it's pashut that you're supposed to be teaching Kriyat Shema. So what's going on here? What is Rashi talking about when he says that we're talking about a cotton which is even a gilach enough that his father's not mechuyev to teach him Shema because of the fact that he's not always home by his man Kriyat Shema. This ties is kasha. This ties v'nil ben tam the ma'aber konshli gilach enough. Rashi's not correct. Says Rabbeinu Tam. We're talking about a cotton which is not legilach enough. What do you mean he's not legilach enough? Because of the fact that he is too young. So of course there's no chiyuv of Shema al tzchinuch for such a kid. Pashut. I'm going to skip now the rest of the Taisus. The Taisus is asking now essentially about the second part of the Mishnah. The second part of the Mishnah tells that there is a chiyuv for nashim, avadim, and ktanim when it comes to tefillah, mezuzah, and berachas hamazon. So we need to understand, what does it mean? That what kind of a katan are we talking about in the second part of the Mishnah? So Taisus brings down the Ri. He disagrees, the Rabbeinu Tam, and what we're going to jump to now is the a few lines down where it says Upir Rabbeinu Tam, which is not like the real Pirush Rabbeinu Tam, the Vadai Ari Hakol Bekatan Shaloi Gia Lechinuch. According to Rabbeinu Tam, this whole mission is talking about a cotton which is not Higia Lechinuch. So when it comes to Shema, the reason I know no Chia for the cotton when it comes to Shema is not Higia Lechinuch. And then what do you mean when you say later on, if we're talking about a cotton, it's any Gia Lechinuch, Then how do you say he's chayiv in tefillin? I'm sorry, how do you say he's chayiv in tefillah? How do you say he's chayiv in mezuzah and berkas hamazon? He's the katan in the gil chinuch. You hear the question? That's the question on Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam, the whole mission is talking about katan in the gil chinuch. The whole mission is talking about in the gil chinuch. I understand the first part when you say he's pater, but I don't understand the second part. They say he's chayiv. Answers Tosfos. What does Rabbeinu Tam say? Right, the same way we have a cher shirt of katan we saw before. So do you have nashim avadim mektanim. These are certain tropes that all are typically used. It doesn't mean that the halacha is exactly the same. Says Rabbeinu Tam, when it says in the Mishnah that a katan is going to be pater in Shema, that's a katan and gilachin. When it says that a katan is going to be chayiv in tefillah, in mezuzah, in berkas hamazon, he's in a gilachin. Of course, he's not chayiv. Even Rabban is not chayiv. If he's not in gilachin, he's not chayiv in anything. Says Rabbeinu Tam. It's just we don't mean the katan there. The whole mission is talking about a katan and a gilachin, but of course we're not meaning he's really chayiv because obviously he's in the gilachin. Then why are we even discussing katan at all? Because it's just one concept that goes together. Certain things go together. It's not always exactly the same halakha. If you remember before, when we had a whole discussion, we had a whole back and forth. The Gemara told us on Tezvav. You remember the whole Gemara about katan when it comes to saying if they're not a deaf mute, they can speak but they can't hear. What's their exact chiyuv? We able to talk about a katan together. Doesn't necessarily mean everything's exactly the same, but there's certain things that go together. And the Gemara asked, well, maybe we should say it's different. The Gemara said, no, it should be the same. That's the general idea. We're always going to have this question because we always put these typological concepts together. Yeah. These things that go together. It doesn't mean that they are always going to go together on every single point. And therefore, for the way Tosfos wants to explain it, we're talking about a katan she'eni gil chinuch. According to Rashi, we're talking about a katan zegil chinuch. According to zegil chinuch, and nashim v'avadim uktana patur mikriyas shema. The reason that this katan is going to be patur in kriyas shema is because the father's not always home. And what about tefillin? What about tefillin? Why is this katan which is zegil chinuch going to be patur in tefillin? Says Rashi at the top of the page. Chaf on the base. U'minatzum mishem the stam katan and yidei lishma gufa shefiach behen. Even though we're talking about a katan zegil chinuch, we still don't trust the katan. And that could, again, explain why even that we say that, even though the Gemara says, katan yedei lishma tefillin, avav chayiv liknas like tefillin, again, what exactly does that mean? Rashi's telling you, stam katan, we're talking about here, katan zegil chinuch. And Rashi's nevertheless still saying a stam katan, any yedei lishma gufa. We're still not 100%. It's going to have to be not just a regular katan. It has to be somebody who's good. In other words, the only way Rashi is going to be able to say that Gemara and Sukkah makes sense is going to say that have to be talking about somebody who is a serious katan that we know for sure he's really able to be sharing the tefillin. Or you could also suggest what Rabbeinu Yomi suggests. Rabbeinu Yomi suggests Yud and Beis in the back. So Rabbeinu Yomi gives two options. He suggests when he brings down the whole Tosfos point, but one of his options, Rabbeinu Yomi says, is maybe the Gemara there in Sukkah, when the Gemara in Sukkah says that it's possible to be kind of filling for a katan, so the Rabbeinu Yomi suggests maybe a shleim to hasam like amar al das chiyuv el lahagilay b'mitzvahs. Even though it says the lashon over there in Sukkah is that katan idea lishma tefillin of chayiv liknei tefillin. So the Rabbeinu Yomi maybe it doesn't actually mean a literal chiyuv. It just means it's a good idea. It's a nice thing. That's the lashon. I'm sorry, of Rabbeinu Yomi. Yeshlam dehasam lekam al das chiyuv el lahagilay b'mitzvahs. It's a regilas. A person should do it, but it's not an absolute kind of a chiyuv. That's potentially another way to explain Rashi. Okay, continues on in Rashi's. So we are on Chaf and Beis there on the top. What does it mean that we say that the woman, the avodim, right, and the time the chayiv in tefillah, the tefillah rachmehi, because tefillah is rachamim midirabonani, and tefillah is dirabonon, v'tiknua af l'noshim, and they were metakin. When you do rabbanon, the rabbis can do whatever they want. So they were metakin tefillah for the women, for the servants, etc. To give chinuch for the kids, etc. Mezuzah berkas hamazon. What about mezuzah berkas hamazon? That's at the Raisa. So mezuzah mitzvah hasei shaloi hazman grama. The mezuzah the mitzvah shaloi says shaloi hazman grama. So women are chayiv in that. When Gemara Park Pshita, the Gemara is going to ask, okay, it's Pashut. Of course, women should be chayiv in that. Berkas Amaz, and Gemara Bay Lo Daraisa. The Gemara is going to explain whether or not that is Daraisa or a Derabanan. All right, so now let's go through the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Kriya Shema Pshita. You're telling me that women are potter in Kriya Shema. That's not Pashut. Mitzvah Asay Shazman Gramo. Kriya Shema is a Mitzvah Asay Shazman Grama. Why? How is it? How is Kriya Shema Mitzvah Asay Shazman Grama? No, we're learning a whole Maseches Brachot still Chafim Beis. How is Kriya Shema Mitzvah Asay Shazman Grama? Because the times you have to say it, right? He said, "B'shar b'chov kumecha." There's times you have to say it. You don't have to say it the whole day. You only say it twice a day. So if you only have to say it twice a day, then Pashut, what? It doesn't apply to women because women are only mechuyim in mitzvahs sasei shas magam. That's a whole sugi in kedushin, which we're not be able to get into now. But this sugi over here is a mitzvahs sasei shas magam kind of sugi. You have the beginning of Yivamis, you have in kedushin, you have it over here as well. So Gemara says again, kriyash ma'apshita mitzvahs sasei shas magam, uvachomas sasei shas magam, and oshim tura is ma'ud tema. I would have thought to held the isba malchus shamayim. I would have thought to have a having minute because the bringing of the saying of kriyash ma is bringing down upon oneself. Accepting upon oneself the yoke of heaven, so that should be applicable at all times. A person should always be accepting upon himself the yoke of heaven. So maybe therefore would be considered mitzvahs to say shel lo yazman grama, like one of these, vav mitzvahs to midiyos. So the Gemara answers no. Kamash Malon, no. Kamash Malon, that this nevertheless the saying of Kriyash Shema is not one of the sort of ideas that it's always incumbent. Of course, it's always incumbent upon a person to have the famous mitzvahs are always incumbent upon a person, but the idea of saying Shema is a specific chiyuv to bring down on oneself Omar Shema, and you have to actually say the Shema, and that therefore makes it a mitzvah as not grama, and therefore women are potter from it. But it's not so potter. I would have thought maybe there should be chayiv in it, and therefore we have to have a limud that tells you that nashim are potter. Then is the Gemara. Says the Gemara, the next one is minat tefillin. So we said that women are potter not just in Shema but also in tefillin. And again, as I said, it's not so simple. There are the Gemara in Eruvin Tzadivav. The Gemara tells us about Rabbi Meir Shita that he holds that women are mechuyev in tefillin. He holds Lila is his man tefillin. This is a debate. I can't get into more now, other than to say it's not so simple. Maybe there are those who want to point out, and sure, others want to say maybe this is, since we're not mentioning it's a star mission, we're not mentioning. And the Gemara says we're not tefillin pshita. Maybe we're trying to say that this is something that would not be going, with Rabbi Meir, if we're going with the Pashat Halacha, that's how we could use the Lashon Pshita. Not 100% clear. For that, it will suffice for the moment. Uminat Tefillin, Pshita says the Gemara. It's Pashat that women are going to be potter in tefillin. Ma'od Tema, Hoyel ve'iskish l'mezuzah, kamashmalon. I might have thought that there might be a hekish between tefillin and mezuzah. What's the hekish? What would be the connection? Says Rashi. Ma'od Tema nakish tefillin mezuzah. First Rashi in the Gemara. Dichsiv. Look at what it says in pasuk. Right? It says kshartim uksaftim. Right next to the tefillin is the mezuzah. Kshartim lo'isay edchem. Right? V'otavish b'neinechem u'sazam zibesech v'shemecha. So since mezuzah and tefillin are put next to each other, so I would think maybe we should make a hagish between the two of them. And the same way a woman is mechuyev in mezuzah, she should be mechuyev in tefillin. Ma mezuzah noshim chayav sav tefillin noshim chayav is kamashmalon not. Kamashmalon not. Continues the Gemara. So now we are talking about the things that women are mechuyev in. So we said that a woman is mechuyev in tefillah. A woman is mechuyev in davening. Remember, Rashi said the chayav mitfillah. Rashi said the tefillah rachmehi. Tefillah is asking for rachman from the Rebbeinu Shalom. Umidi rabbanani, and it's rabbinic. So the rabbis would take no aflanoshim, and the rabbis could make it mechuyev to women. Says the Gemara v'chayav mitfillah. Again, there's a big difference in the gear size here. Again, we're just going to keep simple and read it more as we have it. The Bach takes out most of it. Taisus puts in the pshita. We don't have time to go through all. We will touch a little bit more in this sugya though, because there's a point I want to mention. So the Gemara says like this: women are mechuyev in tefillah. The rachamim, because tefillah is rachamim. Says Rashi, v'lo gars pshita. We don't have the gears here pshita. The holav daraisa, because there's no pshita here because this is not daraisa. In other words, if we were saying on the other things, women are potter in, so we said pshita, of course. What would be the havmin otherwise? We have to explain what the havmin is. There's no pshita, says Rashi here, because of the fact that it's pasha to us that when it comes to tefillah, that it's only rabbinic, and since it's only rabbinic, the rabbis can do whatever they want. And since it's for rachamim, they made it for women. So if we don't say pshita that women are chayiv in it, what would be the havmina to think that they're not chayiv in it? That's according to the Rashi. They say Taisa disagrees, and we'll see some other opinions now. The Hayam Tefillah says the Gemara, the Rachamim, because Tefillah is Rachamim. Mao the Tema. You might have thought it's a haluk sivla or v'vaykav tzaraim. Since we say in the Shemana Esrei, we have a pasuk in Tehillim that tells us when erev v'vaykav tzaraim atayv kilachol rachamecha. Right? That sounds like when is the time for the davening? In the morning, in the evening, right? In the afternoon, etc. So therefore, maybe kim mitzvahs asay shazman groma. That maybe it would be like a mitzvah asay shazman groma, and therefore women will be pater and tefillah. On that we answer. What is our answer? Kamash Malon, no. Kamash Malon, that we don't go there. So what is Rashi being very, very clear? 2 times. Rashi in the Mishnah, Rashi here. What is Rashi telling us about tefillah? About tefillah? Tefillah is what? Tefillah is the rabbinic, right? Tefillah is the rabbanon. Let's look at the Rif in Yud Alef Amud Beis. Says the Rif. Kriyash Matzon, the Havli Mitzvah Sesha is my grandma, Chumas Sesha is my grandma, Noshim Beturais. When it comes to Kriyash Matzon, the Mitzvah Sesha is my grandma, and all Mitzvah Sesha is my grandma, women are potter. Says the Rif, Tefillah u'mezuzah u'berkas hamazon, the Havli Mitzvah Sesha loy has man grandma, v'chumas Sesha loy has man grandma, Noshim Chayavais. Says the Rif, what are we talking about when it comes to Tefillah? Tefillah, mezuzah, and berkas hamazon, all Mitzvah Sesha loy has man grandma. And almost as my grandma, women are chayivin. So why is a woman chayiv in tefillah? Because they're raisa, and because that's in fact not a mitzvah as my grandma. A person is mechayiv daven every day, any time of the day that works for them, and they are not parted from it. So in other words, the Rif is saying not like Rashi. Rashi is telling you the reason that women are chayiv in tefillah is because it's the rabbanon, and the rabbanon can make a takana for whoever they want. Why do they make tefillah for women? Because it's rachamim, and they want it to apply to women. Says the Rif, no. When it was saying that women are chayiv in tefillah, it's not chayiv in tefillah midrabban, it's chayiv in tefillah midaraisa. Why is it chayiv in tefillah midaraisa? Because it's shalei azman grama. It's not a mitzvah that says man grama. It says the Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah, Perik Aleph Halacha Beis, ulefikach nashim v'avadim chayavim b'tefillah lefishi mitzvah says shalei azman grama. Like literally what the Rif says. It's mamish exactly from the Rif. And that's partial, as the Kesef Mishnah points out. Like that is what our Gemara is telling us. So you see that you can look at our Gemara and see what Rashi says, and see what the Rambam is saying and the Rif is saying. On the one hand, right? Do you have the pshita here? Do you not have the pshita here? You take out the part of the back of the mountain. You don't take it out. All of these questions are fundamental to understanding when it says that women are chayiv and tefillah. Are we talking about the Rabbanan or the Raisa? Now again, what we're not talking about, when the Ram says a woman are chayiv and tefillah midaraisa, the Ram doesn't mean that you're chayiv in Shemona Esrei. We're going to come up to a Gemara Chavdal, talk about the tefillah of his tiknum or Rabbanan's tiknum. All that's not what the Ram is saying. The Ram is saying the issue of tefillah is not the 18 benedictions of Shemona Esrei. Tefillah is davening to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Davening to the Rebbeinu Shalom, that's a chiyuv for every man and every woman. The rabbis have a whole thing of Yudches Brachot is very nice, but the chiyuv, the etzem chiyuv of davening to the Rebbeinu every day, tefillah. Every person has a chiyuv, men and women. It's a shloyas mangram. It doesn't make a difference when you do it. At some point during the day, you have to do it. Clear? This is what I wanted to just point out quickly from the Rambam, and just to mention that this is brought down nicely in the Netziv in the Hamik She'ela. It's actually right before. It's in the middle of what he's talking about in relation to Hanukkah stuff. So we don't have the time now to get into it, but just to mention on our point here. So he says as follows. He says like this. Right, Hazman Grama. The idea of 3 tefillas, morning, afternoon, evening, is for sure Hazman Grama. Of course, you don't have shachas in the afternoon. It's the shachas. The morning is what's kaveh. There's no shachas in the afternoon. So of course it's Hazman Grama. So we come welcome ikar tefillah shehu mitzvahs asay min haTorah. Ein hazman grama v'nashachev. That's exactly what I just told you, right? That the ikar chiyuv of tefillah, not the Shemona Esrei of the morning, the ikar tefillah of davening to the Rebbeinu Shalom, that is ein hazman grama, and therefore women are chayiv in it. Mela takonas hanavim v'chacham kimu ba Keimu Bahu Gamkein. And therefore, the Takana of the Nevi'im, the Chacham, etc., they're also going to be Kaimel Zek, Kivan Harav Dav Vital, Shehevi Agoin, that he brings down some Goin, etc., who says as follows. That's the Rambam Zal, Sheikr Tefillah min haTorah. The Ikr Tefillah, not the Yuches Brachos, the Ikr Tefillah of Davin for the Shalom, that is min haTorah. And he says as well, he says, this language that tefillah was a chiyuv, it's enes ma'grama, it's a chiyuv anashim. He says that's also seen in the Rif, as we just pointed out. Maybe the Rif had that girsa in the Gemara itself. Maybe in his Gemara he had that. Remember, as I say, there's a difference in the girsa of Rashi, Taisus, the Bach. Maybe the Rif had a different girsa also. Maybe in his Gemara it literally said that when it came to tefillah, to Mrs. Asay, Shaloy Azan Grama and Ashmachayav, maybe they had such a girsa in it. The Kalmak Mein Arai, the Rambam Machras, not 100% clear about the Rambam, the Eshleim, the Mishum Sheikr Tefillah, but Be'ez Tor Min HaTorah Kulei Amak Mashikot El Isaf. Okay, there's more to say on it. Naxal in the Dasarif, the have its field Rabbanon, Meikar have a Nashim Peturais, Mishum have mitzvahs as my grandma. But of course, if the Iker Tefillah, what were you talking about, was Rabbanon, of course we won't be putter in it for the Rif, because then it will be a mitzvah as my grandma, because the rabbis put in the Chiyuv of Tefillah as the Yitzchak Brachas, that is morning, afternoon, evening. That is it. Actually says not grandma. Then woman should be actually putter. The Rashi obviously is not saying it in the same way. Because he's talking about the chiyuv that the rabbis put in, the rachamim that women have to do it. Nevertheless, so that is a fundamental machlekes in how to learn the Gemara. I don't believe it's an actual fundamental machlekes in the sense of there's a wider machlekes, right? There's the machlekes, the famous machlekes, the Rambam and the Ramban, Tfilas Avos, Tfilas Karbanos. We already saw in the Gemara, but there's a separate machlekes there, which is the idea of the chiyuv of tefillah for the Ramban is a chiyuv be'es sar. The tefillah is the etzem chiyuv of the tefillah, according to the Ramban, is be'ez tsar. Not like the Rambam, who says it's just a chiyuv every day, just to daven. It's nothing to do with a tsar per se. You just always have a chiyuv to daven on a daily basis. So that is a separate machlekes. Again, not more we could say right now, and that's so obvious that here would be a place that we could see anything from it. Again, if the gears are different, perhaps we will be able to make that argument. Okay, continues the Gemara. Says the Gemara, we are now mezuzah. Ube mezuzah, yes? Ube mezuzah. So what are we saying about mezuzah? Shita, woman achayev mezuzah. The Gemara says, Pashit, ma'odetei mahel be'itzcha shel Talmud Torah. No, it's not so Pashit. You might have thought that it's comparable to Talmud Torah, and we know by Talmud Torah, the Pasuk tells us what? And what does the Gemara going to tell us? Again, the whole Gemara said the Chapal, woman chayiv in Talmud Torah, should be chayiv in Talmud Torah in order to protect him from being a saita, etc. All of that is not for the moment, but the Gemara is telling us that women are chayiv in mezuzah. What do you mean? Why would you think that? Says the Gemara, because you think maybe it's a hekesh of Talmud Torah. Kamashma, there's no hekesh of Talmud Torah. Women remain chayiv in mezuzah. Says Rashi, nakesh mezuzah l'Talmud Torah dechsiv u'imaratem oisem es b'nechem. Pasuk tells us that you should teach your children, your sons, Torah, v'samach le'chsavtam, not Talmud Torah, nashim peturais, just like by Talmud Torah, women are part of Afagav, de'enes man grama, even though what? Even though it's enes man grama, the chiyuv of Talmud Torah is by day and by night, yomam v'layla. And so since it's not as man grama, you would think women should be chayiv in it. No, Rachmana Petrinu, the rabbis were partnering the woman, dechsiv, as b'nechem v'loy b'neisechem. So then, af mezuzah, you might think women should also be part of mezuzah because of the fact that mezuzah is right next to Talmud Torah in Shema. So maybe women should be part of that as well. After mezuzah, nashim turis kamashma. No, the nashim chayavis. Women are mechayiv mezuzah. The says l'man yibri mechem gari b'chay nashi lav b'chay b'tmiya. Are men only needing life and not women? Now, just point out as follows. This is coming from Gemara. A couple of places. One, I'm going to show you the Gemara from Yuma. The Gemara tells the Yuma like this. The Gemara says to us as follows. The Gemara Yud Alpha Beis in Yuma. The Gemara says the following: Tanur Rabbanan, Beis HaKnesses, the Beis HaIsha, Beis HaShutfin, Chayev Mezuzah. A Beis Knesses, a woman's home, or Beis HaShutfin are all Mechayev Mezuzah. It says more Pshita. A woman's home is Mechayev Mezuzah. It's Pashit. Ma'od Etem Beis Secha. Right? Saptam Al Mezuzah Beis Secha. Only your home. V'loy Beis Sach. Maybe it means only a man's home, not a woman's home. Beischa, v'loy batei. Maybe it means only your home, not a house of partners. Says the Gemara, Kamash Blan. That's the chiyuv that we're teaching you, is that's why you have to say that a beis ha'isha, beis ha'shutfan is chiyuv mezuzah. Says the Gemara, b've'im ha'chanami. maybe in fact you are, in fact, pater. Maybe when it says means that a woman that a woman's home is not mechuyev mezuzah. Maybe in fact that's what it's trying to teach you, that a woman's home is not mechuyev mezuzah. Says the Gemara, no, that cannot be. Amar Kro leman yirbu yemechem v'imei v'nechem. Says pasuk that you should be able to live a long life. If you're going to do a mezuzah, leman yirbu yemechem v'imei v'nechem, you should have a long life. Your children should have long lives. Hani boy chayev, hani loy boy chayev. Doesn't mean only the man needs life and the woman doesn't need life. El beisachos lumli is a new answer. So in other words, that's what Rashi is going on. The idea that anashim are boy chayev, women are not boy chayev, women don't need life. Of course, women need life. So obviously, you can't read L'man Yibri Mechem Yevinechem is only talking about men. Of course, to my woman. You can't read of course, it's everybody's home. Everybody needs chayah. So I thought cute to just mention to you the following. Remember the Gemara we had? We had before. The Gemara told us on Ches. Ches Amud Aleph. Remember the Gemara? The Gemara told us about the wide lines in the beginning. The Gemara said that they have old men in Bavel. So Tamar, Rabbi Yechon was shocked. They have old men in Bavel? How could it be? The pasuk is clear. It means only in the land of Israel there should be old people. That's where you only get long life. How can it be long life in Bavel? So what did the Gemara answer? They get up early to come to shul. They go at night to go to shul. So then he said, that's how they have the schus that they're going to live. In other words, because the pasuk of L'man Yibri Mechem is pasuk and only Eretz Yisrael. So what do we have for the woman? There should be the same problem for the woman. Right? If we're dashing L'man Yibri Mechem v'mei al Adama, so how are we going to answer for the man? Al Adam is only in Eretz Yisrael. So we answer for the men. They come to shul early. So how are they going to answer for the woman? We're going to have to use the Gemara that we saw. Right? Remember the Gemara that we just saw. We saw a Gemara. Where's the Gemara? The Gemara was on Yud Zayin, right? The Gemara told us on Yud Zayin, on Alpha on the bottom. The Gemara said, what's the woman's chus to get into heaven? The Gemara answered, even if they don't themselves going to shul, but they bring their kids, they wait for their husbands, they encourage the husbands. That is also presumably would explain Rabbi Yochanan his question of L'man Yibri Mechem Yevinechem Al Adam, but only answers for the men. That would presumably be the answer for the woman as well. And yeah, as you see, we're dashing that whole pasuk of L'man Yibri Mechem V'imei. It's not just Menechem, it's also B'nai Sechem, and it's not Al Adama just by men going to shul, even women we have to explain as well, and we have just given that explanation. Okay, continues the Gemara. So we are now up to Birchas Hamazon. Birchas Hamazon. Says the Gemara, Birchas Hamazon Pshita. It's Pasha Birchas Hamazon. Women are going to be chayiv in that. What's the question? Right? Because the pasuk says that Hashem said, "I'm going to give you to the Jewish people. I'm giving you food. The erev, I'm giving you basar, and I'm giving you the man babayker." So that you see, bless you, that you see that it comes out at different times. The food. So kim mitzvah sasei shazman grama. Maybe it's like a mitzvah sasei shazman grama. Kamashmalan, it's not a mitzvah sasei shazman grama. Right, so Birchas Hamazon is not considered to be a mitzvah sasei shazman grama because of the fact that you might have thought that it may be because you get food at different times, so maybe you eat at different times of the day. So therefore, we say no. It's a chiyuv woman in Birchas Hamazon. It is not a mitzvah sasei shazman grama. Tells us no. There's no Rashi here. So there is what do you call Taisus, but we're going to get to that Taisus soon. The Gemara is going to explain. Okay, continues the Gemara. So we are now up to Rav Ada bar Ava. Yeah, 2 dots. Amar Rav Ada bar Ava. Nash Mechayavos B'Kiddush Hayom Devar Torah. Rav Ada bar Ava says the women are Chayim Kiddush Hayom Devar Torah. Women are Mechayav Devar Torah. I just thought to point out interesting. If you looked at the Gemara that we had a couple of days ago in your Testament base, the Gemara told Rabbi Elazar Tzaddik. Sorry, not Rabbi Elazar. Right after the Gemara for Rabbi Elazar Tzaddik, the Gemara said Kiddush Rava. The Amar Rava Devar Torah. Oil tefach, that it was a dvar Torah that every oil that has a chatzitza of a tefach that has a space is a chatzitza, and therefore it won't be tamei. Therefore, you could jump over it if you're a kain. And what did Rashi say? And what does it mean dvar Torah? Rashi says dvar Torah is halacha l'Moshe misinai. I'm not 100% sure that fits with this Gemara over here. It's a bit of a question on Rashi. Because look at the Gemara over here. What does the Gemara say? Woman if it's Halakha Moshe Sinai, we wouldn't be asking it as a question, right? The Rambam tells us, but in the Halakha Moshe Sinai, we're not asking as questions. All right, I have to leave that on the side. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? You're telling me women are chayiv in Kiddush? Why are women chayiv in Kiddush? When do you do Kiddush? Only on Shabbos. If you only do Kiddush on Shabbos, then what by definition it is? Mrs. says the man grandma. Someone should be potter in it. So says the Gemara, when Rabban Bar said Nosh Mechayos with the Kiddush Hayom Midvar Torah, he meant Midrabanan. Again, how does that feel with the Halakha Moshe? What's even the Havmina? Okay, we have to put that on the side. Amar Le Rava, V'Hadar Torah Kama. What are you talking about? You can't be right. It says Var Torah. It obviously has to mean Daraisa. The Oikol Mitzvah Say the Chayim Rabbanan. You're going to say that every Mitzvah say that women are potter and the rabbis made him mechayiv in it. Come on. And the Amar Rabba Amar Kozach V'Sham Kol Sheyesh Mishmir Yesam B'Schira. Pasuk tells us Zachar Yom Shabbos Kadosh Shamas Yom Shabbos in the asserts the difference of Yisrael and in Veschanan. Since that's Zachar V'Shamar Kol Sheyesh Mishmir Yesam B'Schira. Anyone who has to keep the Shabbos, anyone who cannot be over on one of the Lavin and Shabbos has to keep also the Shmir Shabbos. So therefore, they also have to keep those have to keep the Shmir Shabbos have to keep the Zechira of Shabbos as well. Since they have to do the Shama, they also have to do the Zachar. Since they have to keep the Lois, they have to keep that stays as well. So therefore, women are mechayiv in Kiddush Hayom mida araisa kol sheyeshna b'shmir yeshna b'schira. Says Rashi Kiddush Hayom mitzvah saseish as magramu dakar tim shabbos kachay zachrei alayayim b'shmir lois aseh melacha v'hani nosh yisnai b'shmir the tanan kol mitzvah lois aseh ben shes magram shleis magrama el mitzvah whether it comes to lois aseh or aseis. Right, women are if they're not shesman grama, the women are mechayiv in the noshim chayov the ish v'akos ishul ish the chol anishin shabbatar. Women are mechayiv like just like a man. In fact, women, we say, Nashim are mechayiv in all loisas shabbatar except for Baltach, right? Baltash is about Tam Lamed. There's a few things that the women are not mechayiv in the same way like a man, but all other lam women are mechayiv in, right? They don't have issues of payas and things of that sort, but every other lam they are mechayiv in. So at this stage of the Gemara, we brought in Kiddush, which was not a part of the Mishnah, and we end up saying, are women mechayiv in Kiddush? Answer, yes, midaraisa the mechayiv in Kiddush, just like a man because they have Zachar Shem. What's the question? How could it be if women are mechayiv in Kiddush midaraisa? How could it be the famous kasha dogma of the Chasam Sofer says not dogma of Rav's kasha? It's really the kasha of the Pri Megadim. In any event, it's known as developed as the dogma of Rav's kasha. Well, dogma of Rav asked, how could it be that a man is coming home on Friday night? His wife is in Kiddush. He's going to be Moitzer in Kiddush. How could it be? He's already Yotzer in Kiddush, which he heard in Shul, which when it already said by Chulu, he already was Yotzer Zayin. How can he be Moitzer his wife? If his wife is Mechayim in Daraisa, and he is now only Mechayim in Darabanan because he's already Yotzer in Kiddush in Shul, three fundamental answers to the question. One of the three fundamental answers, number one, the famous answer of Mechas Chinuch, the answer of Kiveg, and the answer of Chasam Sofer. The answer of Mechas Chinuch is no. When we say that a man is saying by Chulu, so he should be Yotzer to Kiddush, is not really being Yotzer Kiddush in Shul. Why is it not being Yotzer Kiddush in Shul? Because Kiddush requires two things: Yitzias Mitzrayim and remembering Ma'aser Bereishis. So when you say what are you remembering? Only Ma'aser Bereishis. You're not saying Yitzias Mitzrayim. You need the Baruch Hadash, right? Right? You have to have a whole. The second part of Kiddush is the Yitzias Mitzrayim. That you didn't do by Chulu. So you're not Yotzer Zayin Kiddush. That's number one. So therefore your Chiyuv of Daraisa still remains, and then if you give your to your wife. For the second answer, the answer of Kiva Eger, the basic idea is that women are also already Yotzer in their midst of Kiddush when they say Good Shabbos, when they lit the candles, they're ready their idea of what it means to be Zachar. So therefore, women and men have the same Chiyuv in Rabbanan at the Shabbos table, and therefore the man can Yotzer the woman in Kiddush. Third answer, the answer of Chasam Sofer, he says that a person has in mind, essentially, when they're saying Vayichulu, not to be Yotzer in Kiddush. So therefore, when they come home, they have a mitzvah deraisa. They could therefore be much the wives. Continues the Gemara, and we are now up to this. Next question. Again, we had just said that women are mechayiv in berachas hamazon. We said it's pashut women are mechayiv in berachas hamazon. You said no, maybe you thought it was a mitzvah says grama because it says in pasuk ba'boiker ba'erev tachul basim berachas bulachem. So we said no, it's not. It's really not a mitzvah says not a mitzvah says grama. Therefore, women are mechayiv in it. So now Rabbeinu is asking Rav. Okay, so we understand that women are mechayiv in berachas hamazon, but is this mission talking about deraisa or derabanan? Now, would this have an impact on the other aspects as well of mezuzah and tefillah? Again, we have to leave that on the side, but that's essentially what should be the input of this question of Ravina to Rava. So I'm Ravina to Rava. Nashmechem Birkas Hamazon the Raisa Rabbanon. I'm Nuchivin Birkas Hamazon on the Raisa level. Rabbanon the level. Says the Marlamai Nafkamino. What's the nafkamina of this? In order to be mighty others. So then, if a woman have a chib daraisa and berachas hamazon, also daraisa, mafik daraisa, then the woman can be mighty others because she has the chib daraisa, and so the husband has the chib daraisa. If you can say it's only chib daraisa, then she'ena mechuyev b'davar, then they're not really mechuyev. Right, so which one is it going to be? If it's mechuyev daraisa, then she can marry to her husband, and if she's not daraisa, if it's only daraisa, then she can't be able to be married to her husband. That's more touch. Bring her right. Be'emes amru, right? You know, in yeshiva, you say be'emes, right? So this is where it comes from, right? Be'emes, you say like this: what? Ben mevarach la'aviv, a son is able to be benching for his dad. The evan mevarach l'rabbi, and the evan for his master. The isha mevarach l'bayla, and a woman can be do merchas hamazon for her husband. But the rabbi said it should be a curse for those whose wives are bent or their children are benching for them. They should be able to bench for themselves. If you're talking about a daraisa, then also daraisa, then it makes sense. A daraisa level, a person can be the parent. We're talking about here about a katan or a wife to be mighty or husband. So we understand that if it will be a daraisa, then the woman should be able to match her husband because they have the same kind of a chiyuv. But if you're going to say the woman's chiyuv is only the rabbanon, all the yamas the rabbanon, also the rabbanon, mafik daraisa, then how could it be that if it was only a chiyuv of the rabbanon, her husband has a chiyuv daraisa, how can she match her husband from when she has a much lower chiyuv? Says the Gemara, I don't understand. So you want to say therefore it's daraisa? But you're talking about a katan here. It's a katan as well. It says ben v'varach la'aviv. Rashi says ben katan. So how could a katan be mighty's father in daraisa? U'ul taimech katan b'achiyuvu? How are you going to answer? You want to say that it has to be daraisa, and therefore woman's able to mighty her husband. Because if it was rabbanan, how could she mighty her husband? But how does it help you? You're talking about a katan as well here, and a katan for sure everybody agrees only the rabbanan. So how could a katan be mighty's father? So that's the Gemara. We're talking about here a situation where he only ate a drabanan type of amount. So he ate a very small amount. So since he only ate a very small amount, therefore he's able to mighty the parent. And therefore, if we're talking about only eating a drabanan amount, then you have no raya. This cannot be a raya, and we cannot answer Rava the question. The Ravina asked the Rava, are we talking about here by the rice of the rabbanon? You don't have a proof from this because this could be that the husband only had the rabbanon amount, and therefore it could be that we're just talking about the rabbanon. The son is able to be mighty the father, and the wife is able to be mighty the husband. Then we have here a taisa that we have to discuss quickly, and before we get to the last bit of Agadah Gemara, says the taisis noshim berachas hamazon the rice of the rabbanon. So taisis brings down the Rashi. Right, that we're talking about here, we're not mechuyev deraisa. What's the reason that a woman wouldn't be mechuyev deraisa? Right, we said that there was a havmin, either woman's mechuyev deraisa or drabanan. What would be the reason that a woman's not mechuyev on a deraisa level? So Rashi says because it says in pasuk that we're bringing that ha'aretz ha'tova asher nasan loch the ha'aretz lo yinin alon kevis. The woman didn't get a land. The imishum b'nei slafchad, and you can say, well, b'nei slafchad got a yerusha. No, a chelik avim heim nachal. They didn't get a chelik to themselves. They took their father's chelik. Mitzad the Yerusha says Taisus. What are you talking about? V'teima says Taisus. Kahanim Leviim nami tavi shared lenitl chelik ba'aretz. Kahanim and Leviim didn't get a chelik in the aretz either. So when you say al aretz hatova, it's not. So the Kahanim shouldn't be able to mighty people either. Leviim also didn't get a chelik. So the same way Nashim didn't get a chelik, then you say Kahanim and Leviim. Taisus, it can't be. That can't be the answer. The time we shouldn't accept al bris chashachasanta b'sareinu. It has to be because of something else. Because of the fact that a bris, and obviously Kahanim and Leviim have a bris, but women don't have a bris. So therefore, since they don't have a bris, since they don't have a bris, they don't have Torah, therefore they would be only having a chiyuv d'rabbanan. That is the tzad to say that. Nevertheless, it's not so simple. Women don't have a bris. Or maybe you could say, woman, like the Gemara tells us, it's like they have a bris. They don't have a chiyuv in bris. But it's not because they don't have a chiyuv, they're potter in it. They're like they already had a bris. They're simply not relevant. So that's why it would be still an argument to potentially say that it's the rice. And yes, the machlokes in Rashi and Taisus is the focus on the aretz, al aretz hatreva shenasamlah, or on the al bris chashikasad b'sareinu. Last line is the Gemara. It's quickly Darish Rabbi Vira. Rabbi Vira used to say the following: Zimna amalam shmei Rabbi Ami, Zimna amalam shmei Rabbi Asi. Sometimes he said it from Rabbi, sometimes he said it from Rabbi Asi. Malachei Ashar Zalman Fnei Hakadosh Baruch Hu. The angels, the celestial angels, said before the Rebbeinu Shalom, Rebbeinu Shalom, because B'sar Sakha Shaloi Sefer Amlikach Sheichad, says by the Rebbeinu Shalom that he doesn't take he doesn't show favor to anybody. What do you mean he doesn't show favor? I can say, but it tells in the Parashat Nasa, Hashem does show favor. So the Gemara responds, Hashem says, should I not show favor to the Jewish people? We just said it is a Pashup Shadchiyah in Birkas Hamazon is only the and the Jewish people are medactic on themselves. Even a small amount. So since they're doing way more than they're required, so of course I should show them favor as well, even though we say in the Torah that Hashem doesn't show favor. Have a wonderful day.